What would happen if the universe suddenly lost its creators and protectors? What would humans do if even the greatest gods could no longer guide the world? And why do forgotten legends whisper that 7 days after the death of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, a new god would rise from silence itself? This story is not presented as historical fact or confirmed scripture. There is no verified Hindu text that directly says a god is born 7 days after the death of the Trimurti. Instead, this is a symbolic and philosophical story inspired by themes found in Hindu cosmology, destiny, fear, suffering, and rebirth. Ideas about cosmic cycles and renewal can be explored through texts like the Bhagavad Gita and the Puranas. But tonight, we are entering a different kind of journey, a journey about humanity itself. Imagine waking up one morning and feeling that something is wrong before anyone even speaks. The sky looks darker, the wind feels heavy, temple bells remain silent, rivers move slowly, like they are carrying grief. Across villages and cities, people begin hearing the same terrifying whisper: the gods are gone. Fear spreads faster than truth. Some people pray harder. Some blame destiny. Some lose hope completely. Families argue. Strangers stop trusting each other. Even the strongest hearts begin to shake. But during these 7 days of silence, an ancient prophecy begins to return. A prophecy that speaks not only about gods, but about human pain, human weakness, and the hidden strength people discover only after everything begins to fall apart. This is not just a story about divine beings. It is a story about loneliness, failure, heartbreak, fear, hope, and the strange way suffering can change a person forever. Stay with this story until the end, because every chapter slowly reveals a deeper truth about destiny and the human heart. And if you enjoy meaningful mythology stories filled with emotion, mystery, and life lessons, remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more journeys into ancient myths and powerful human truths. The first day after the disappearance of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva did not begin with fire or storms. It began with silence, a strange silence that made people uncomfortable without knowing why. In small villages, temple bells remained still even when the morning wind passed through them. In large cities, crowded streets suddenly felt cold and empty. Shop owners opened their doors late. Farmers stood quietly in their dry fields. Even birds seemed to disappear from the sky. No one could explain what was happening. Some believed the world was ending. Others thought it was only fear spreading through people's minds. Since this story is symbolic and not taken from verified scripture, the events are meant to reflect human emotions during times of uncertainty and loss. But for the people living inside this story, the fear felt completely real. Among them was a young man named Aarav. He had already suffered more than most people his age. His father died years earlier after a long illness, leaving the family in debt. His mother worked every day sewing clothes for wealthy families, but money was never enough. Aarav had spent years believing that hard work and kindness would change his future. Yet every year brought new problems. Sometimes he watched selfish people become successful, while honest people continued suffering. Slowly, he stopped believing destiny was fair. That evening, Aarav walked toward the village temple, hoping to find peace. But the sacred fire inside had gone out. The priests looked afraid. Nobody knew what to say anymore. For the first time in his life, Aarav felt that even faith itself had become weak. Around him, people whispered about missing signs in the sky and strange dreams during the night. Fear moved from one person to another, faster than truth. As darkness covered the village, An old traveler entered the town, carrying nothing except a wooden staff. His voice was calm, while everyone else panicked. He looked at the frightened crowd and quietly said, "These 7 days are not punishment. They are a mirror. Humanity is about to see its true face." Nobody understood his words, but before leaving, Aarav noticed something strange behind the traveler in the fading sunset. The shadow of a child standing silently in the distance, watching everything. On the second day of silence, Aarav left his village and walked toward the northern hills, hoping distance would clear his mind. But the farther he traveled, the more pain he saw. Every road carried the same feeling: fear, confusion, exhaustion. When he reached a small village near the river, he realized the suffering there was different from his own, yet strangely familiar. The streets were quiet, not because people were resting, but because they had lost the strength to speak. A mother sat outside her small home, pretending she had already eaten, so her children would not feel guilty taking the last pieces of bread. A young boy stared at the river with empty eyes after failing the same exam for the 3rd time. An old man waited every evening near the village entrance, hoping his sons would return to visit him, even though they had left years earlier. Aarav noticed something important. Pain changed people in different ways. Some became softer and kinder because they understood suffering. Others became angry and cold. One farmer shared food with hungry strangers even though his own crops had failed. Another man secretly stole rice from his neighbors at night because fear had become stronger than shame. Aarav began wondering if hardship revealed a person's true nature instead of creating it. Every night, villagers gathered around a storyteller who sat beside a weak fire under an old tree. He did not speak like a priest or ruler. His stories were simple, but they stayed in people's hearts. One night he held a seed in his hand and said, "When a seed is buried underground, it does not understand why darkness surrounds it. It may believe life has trapped it forever, but the same darkness that buries the seed also helps it grow." The villagers listened quietly while the wind moved through the trees. Those words disturbed Aarav because he spent years comparing his life to others. He envied successful people. He hated seeing dishonest people live comfortably while honest families suffered daily. The storyteller seemed to understand his thoughts without hearing them. He looked at Aarav and said softly, "Comparison is a silent poison. Many people smile outside while fighting battles nobody can see." Aarav looked around at the tired faces near the fire and slowly realized something painful. Every person carried hidden wounds. Some simply hid them better than others. Aarav continued his journey alone after leaving the village of broken dreams behind. The air became colder as he moved closer to the mountains. The path was narrow, surrounded by tall trees that blocked most of the sunlight. In this silence, his thoughts became louder than ever. He kept thinking about everything he had seen: suffering, kindness, greed, and hope, living together in the same world. According to this fictional story inspired by symbolic ideas in ancient traditions, the world of the gods had already fallen into silence. But inside human hearts, a different search had begun. After many hours of walking, Aarav reached an old mountain temple. The structure was large but abandoned. Stones were broken, walls were covered in dust. There were no statues inside, no priests, and no sound of prayer. Only wind moved through the empty halls. This emptiness made Aarav feel uneasy, as if the temple itself was waiting for something that never arrived. Inside this silent place, he met a blind woman sitting calmly near the broken entrance. She was not afraid of the darkness around her. In fact, She seemed peaceful, as if she had already accepted it. When Aarav asked why she stayed in such a place, she answered softly that most people only search for light when they lose everything else. Her words were not from scripture or authority, but from observation of human life. She explained that many people worship comfort, not truth. When life becomes painful, they begin searching for meaning. As Aarav listened, he began noticing something deeper. People outside often hide their true feelings. Some smile while feeling empty inside. Some appear strong but are tired from constant struggle. Others act successful but feel lonely in silence. The blind woman did not call this weakness. She called it the hidden truth of human life. These words connected with Aarav's own experiences, making him question how many people around him were also silently struggling. Before Aarav left the temple, the woman shared a final message. She said there was an old prophecy hidden in forgotten stories. After the end of the great cycle, a new force would rise not with thunder or war, but through human pain and awareness. It would not arrive as a ruler or destroyer, but as understanding born inside suffering. Aarav walked away from the temple confused but deeply affected, as if the emptiness he saw outside was slowly reflecting something already inside him. The journey changed again when Aarav left the mountain temple behind. The wind felt different now, almost like it was carrying something unseen across the land. In this fictional symbolic story, inspired by ideas of cycles found in traditions like the Puranas, the world was still inside 7 days of silence after the disappearance of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. But unlike fear and confusion before, something strange was beginning to form in human expectation. People were not only afraid anymore, they were waiting. On the seventh sunrise, the sky did not break with storms or light. Instead, everything became still. Villagers gathered outside, expecting some powerful divine sign. Some believed a new god would appear in fire.
Others thought destruction would complete the cycle, but what happened was very simple, almost too simple for anyone to understand. Outside a silent field beneath a completely dry and dead tree, a small child was found sleeping. There was no crown, no light around him, no symbol of power, just silence and stillness. This moment confused everyone because it did not match human expectations of divinity or change. As people slowly gathered around, they began rejecting what they saw. Many expected something dramatic, so they believed it could not be important. This reflects a real human behavior pattern where people often ignore simple truths because they expect big signs or complex answers. In real life, people sometimes miss small solutions because they wait for perfect moments or loud confirmations. When the child finally opened his eyes, there was no fear in his expression. He looked at the crowd and spoke calmly. He said that the world did not fall into suffering because gods disappeared, but because humans slowly forgot kindness while chasing power, pride, and control. His words were not meant to blame, but to reflect. Some people felt uncomfortable hearing this, while others stayed silent as if they were recognizing something they had always avoided thinking about. Then something unexpected happened. The dead tree above him slowly showed tiny green leaves. It was not a miracle in the dramatic sense, but a slow natural change, like life returning where everything seemed lost. This moment suggested a simple idea. Even places that appear empty or finished can begin again. Aarav, watching from a distance, felt something shift inside him. It was not fear anymore. It was the beginning of understanding that not everything powerful needs to be loud. After the seventh sunrise, the world did not return to normal. Instead, it entered a strange phase of testing. People were still living their daily lives, but their choices began to feel heavier, as if every action carried meaning. In this symbolic continuation of the story inspired by ideas from ancient cycles found in texts like the Upanishads, humanity was now facing not divine punishment, but reflection through situation. The first test appeared quietly through greed. Food became limited in many places because trade and supply systems were breaking down. In some villages, people began sharing what they had, even when it was very little. A farmer divided his last grain with strangers because he believed survival meant unity. At the same time, others began hiding food in fear of tomorrow. A wealthy merchant stored supplies in secret rooms while children outside went hungry. This situation showed a simple truth. Crisis does not create character, it reveals it. The second test came through fear. A sudden illness spread across nearby towns and no one fully understood it. Some families chose to care for sick members even when they were afraid. Others left their loved ones behind, unable to face danger. Fear changed people's decisions more than logic. This reflected a common human behavior seen in real life during disasters, where fear can either build compassion or break trust between people. The third test was pride. Local leaders and powerful individuals tried to control the situation by claiming authority over frightened villagers. They argued about rules, ownership, and control, even when survival should have been the focus. The child who appeared earlier remained calm and refused to support any group. He simply said that truth does not belong to any throne or title. His silence made many powerful people uncomfortable because it removed their sense of control. The fourth test was despair. This was the most difficult one. As days passed, hope itself started to fade from many hearts. People stopped believing that life could improve. Aarav himself reached this point again. He felt tired of suffering and unsure if change was even possible. But the child spoke gently, saying that despair grows when people believe pain is permanent. He did not promise quick change. Instead, he suggested that even small actions can slowly shift a person's path. These four tests were not miracles or battles. They were everyday choices placed in difficult situations. Through them, the story showed that destiny, if it exists, is often shaped quietly through human behavior, not loud events. After the tests of humanity, Aarav felt something change inside him. The world still looked the same on the outside, but his way of seeing it was different. The silence of the 7 days still continued, but now it felt less like fear and more like reflection. In this symbolic story inspired by ideas of cycles and rebirth found in texts such as the Bhagavad Gita, suffering was no longer only something to escape. It was something that forced questions people normally avoid. Aarav began thinking deeply about everything he had experienced, the pain of losing his father,
The struggle of his mother working endlessly, the unfairness he felt when dishonest people seemed to succeed faster than honest ones. For years, he believed life was simply unfair and random. But now, he started to notice something different. Pain had changed him slowly over time. It made him more aware of others. It made him notice hidden struggles in people he once ignored. The child who appeared under the dead tree continued walking with him. One day, Aarav finally asked a question that had been inside him for a long time. He asked why suffering exists if the world is meant to be meaningful. The child did not give a simple answer. Instead, he said that destiny is not a fixed punishment written in stone. He explained that human life is shaped by choices, reactions, and awareness. Pain can shape understanding, but it does not automatically give wisdom. Wisdom comes from how a person responds. As they traveled, they met different people whose lives reflected this truth. A student who failed many times eventually found a new path in teaching others. A woman who lost her family slowly rebuilt her life by helping other struggling people. A man who lost everything in business learned to live simply and became calmer than before. These examples showed that life does not move in a straight line. It changes direction through experience, not perfection. Aarav slowly stopped asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and started asking, "What can I learn from this moment?" This shift was not sudden. it was slow and difficult. Some days he still felt pain and confusion, but he no longer believed suffering was meaningless. Instead, he saw it as something that could either break a person or slowly reshape them. By the end of this chapter, Aarav was not fully healed, but he was no longer lost. He was beginning to understand that suffering is not always the end of a story. Sometimes it is the part that changes how the rest of the story is written. The final stage of the 7 days arrived with a strange calm. The world did not feel like it was ending anymore. It felt like it was waiting for something important to be understood. In this symbolic story, inspired by ideas of cycles and renewal found in traditions like the Upanishads, the silence that once created fear had slowly turned into reflection. Aarav and the child continued walking through villages where people were no longer panicking, but quietly watching life with new awareness. The child finally stopped near an open field and spoke clearly for the first time about his purpose. He said he was not sent to replace Brahma, Vishnu, or Shiva. He explained that people often imagine change as something external, like a new ruler or powerful force. But in reality, change begins inside human thinking, behavior, and understanding. This idea shifted everything Aarav had believed until that moment. The child then explained the deeper meaning of the 7 days. The first days were fear and confusion. The middle days were suffering and loss. The later days were reflection and learning. And the final day was awareness. This cycle was not just about gods or myths. It reflected how humans naturally move through emotional stages during crisis. This interpretation is symbolic and not a confirmed historical teaching, but it connects with how many philosophical systems describe human emotional growth. As people listened from a distance, something slowly changed in their behavior. They did not suddenly become perfect or free from pain, but they began to act differently. Some people started helping neighbors again. Families who had stopped speaking began to reconnect. Small acts of kindness returned quietly, without announcement or reward. The world did not become magical, but it became more human again. Aarav looked at all of this and realized something deeply personal. He understood that destiny was not a single force controlling everything. Instead, it was shaped by how people respond to suffering, fear, and change. The child did not stay forever. One morning, he simply disappeared without explanation. There was no dramatic event, only silence again. But this time, it felt different. As the sun rose, Aarav walked toward a rebuilding village. Life continued, but his understanding had changed completely. He realized that the greatest transformation was not the appearance of a new god, but the awakening of human awareness. And in that quiet realization, the story reached its final truth. This story about the 7 days after the silence of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva is not based on any verified scripture or historical record. It is a symbolic story created to explore human emotions, fear, hope, and change. Real Hindu philosophy, found in texts like the Bhagavad Gita and other ancient writings, often speaks about cycles of life, change, and understanding. But the idea of a new god born after 7 days is not a confirmed teaching. It is used here as a storytelling idea, not as fact. When we follow Aarav's journey, we see something very simple but very real about human life. People often believe that outside forces control their destiny. They wait for miracles, signs, or powerful changes from outside. But life usually changes in a quieter way. It changes when people begin to understand their own actions, choices, and reactions. Fear can make people weak, but it can also make them reflect. Suffering can break people, but it can also teach patience and awareness. These ideas are not religious claims. They are human experiences seen across many cultures and situations. The story shows that even when everything feels lost, people slowly rebuild through small actions. A kind word, a shared meal, or a moment of understanding can bring change without any dramatic event. This is what happened in Aarav's journey. He did not find a powerful god in the sky. He found a new way of seeing life inside himself. The final message is simple. Many times, what we call destiny is actually a mix of life events and human response. We may not control everything that happens, but we can control how we respond to it. That response slowly shapes our path forward. As the story ends, there is no loud ending or final miracle, only silence turning into peace. And in that peace, a quiet truth remains. Sometimes the greatest change is not in the world around us, but in the way we begin to understand it.